Australia is the world's largest island. Geographic separation over thousands of years resulted in 90% of the species found in Australia being endemic to this vast land. And for the locals, living here means living among some of the world's most dangerous animals. Some of these animals can kill instantly, others leave lasting injuries, and some can just inflict a nasty bite. In all, 72 animals can cause us damage. But which one tops the list of most dangerous? Slithering into the spotlight first on our program is one of the kings of the world when it comes to venom. It's extremely dangerous. It has a track record that will make you think twice if you're in its territory, and it's quite likely lurking in your neighborhood. With scales varying from dusty orange to a shimmering dark brown, this very attractive reptile is lauded as the second most venomous snake in the world, and solely responsible for racking up the most recorded snakebite fatalities in Australia. Distinguishable only on close inspection from other brown snakes, the eastern brown snake has a distinctive creamy white belly with characteristic pinky orange blotches. Whatever you do, take heed. This little beauty is not particularly fond of humans.
When it rolled over on its belly and I seen the pink spots on its belly, the orange and motley coloured spots on its belly, I thought, this is not good.
An afternoon pottering in the garden of his rural northern Queensland property proved life-threatening for Rod Somerville. Hidden amongst the dense potted plants and poised to strike was the highly potent eastern brown snake.
As I put my hand backwards, the snake came with. Straight away, you know there's something wrong, especially when I knew what the snake was. Sort of sets your heart racing a little bit, and you sort of think, whoa, don't panic, don't panic.
Staying calm, applying pressure to the bite site, and getting himself to hospital as quickly as possible was vital to staying alive. After phoning an ambulance, Rod deliberated what to do next.
And I thought, do I phone the wife up or wake the young bloke up inside? Basically, I sort of thought, well, if I panic them, it's going to make me panic more, and that increases your circulation, so the venom will travel further through your body faster. So I just kept holding my finger, and because I couldn't do much else from there, I thought, bugger it, if I'm going to die from a snake bite, I'm going to have a beer.
An unconventional approach? Perhaps. Understandable? We'll let you be the judge of that. Rick Shine, professor of biology at Sydney University, offers his advice.
Eastern browns have small fangs, but very, very potent venom. And there are a few cases where people have died literally within minutes of a bite. Normally, if you use the standard first aid procedure, which is an immobilizing bandage wrapped around the bite site towards the heart, everything's fine, and you've got several hours to get to hospital and so on. But there are a few very tragic cases where people have died quite quickly from brown snake bite.
Growing to 2 meters in length, this very active snake thrives in the hot, arid regions of eastern Australia. Along the entire east coast into the southern tip of the Northern Territory and even across to South Australia. This timid species accounts for 90% of deaths in Australia from snakebite, due in part to the potent venom delivered in an attack and its accidental yet common interaction with humans. The high mortality rate delivered by the venomous fangs of the eastern brown snake does little to deter the enthusiasm and daily handling of this animal by Jeremy Hewberg of the Billabong Sanctuary in Townsville.
A bite from an eastern brown is generally a warning bite, and quite often a dry bite, which means they don't envenomate, and that's a really big sign that they're not out to get us. They are in fact afraid of us, and if you don't take that warning, if you don't take the hint, any subsequent bites they probably will envenomate, and then you'll be in a bit of trouble.
In the act of defense, the shy eastern brown will play its bluff, striking out with a dry bite. Will you roll the dice again? Playing Russian roulette with this kingpin could prove fatal.
You get bit by a snake and it's all over and done with in a couple of days.
Initial medical diagnosis was that Rod had been giving a warning bite. With the release of the compression bandage, it very quickly became clear this was not the case.
Well, I was shaking profusely and I was vomiting pretty hard. Totally soaked in sweat because you are vomiting that hard. I didn't know what the end story was going to be.
Highly destructive neurotoxins were surging through Rod's body, acting as an anticoagulant, placing him at severe risk of bleeding out. His blood pressure had spiked. His kidneys were shutting down.
Whoa, things aren't good. You sort of feel like, hang on, I was going all right there a second ago, and now all of a sudden, within a few minutes, you start to feel a little bit wobbly, a little bit dizzier, and get a little bit vague.
Medical staff quickly had Rod hooked up to a drip administering life-saving antivenom. But from this point, things only got worse.
From the antivenom, I got the anaphylactic reaction. Started getting tingles all over, shaking, throat was swelling up, lips were tingly. Started getting a bit hairy at that stage. Then ended up taken to intensive care.
The extreme potency of this toxic bite was destroying muscle tissue at a rapid rate. Rod's kidneys were working overtime in a desperate attempt to process his very own tissue. His kidneys needed help. They were blocked. They were failing.
When they took me up to intensive care, they put so much fluid into me, or I guess they had to try to flush my kidneys. I ended up going from about 94 kilos up to 110 kilos. And my legs all puffed up, my face puffed up. Every part of me puffed up. Then they had to take me off the fluid they were giving me, because I also got a lot of fluid on my lungs, and it was making it very hard to breathe. And I was a bit worried about lying down flat at night, so I basically stayed awake most of the time whilst I was in hospital.
Rod spent the next 3 weeks in hospital hoping for the best.
The eastern brown is considered the second most venomous snake in the world. It's the neurotoxins that give it that high ranking. A bite is very, very dangerous.
Ranking second on the list of most venomous snakes in the world, the eastern brown falls short of taking the crown from the fearsome inland taipan. Both snakes carry an extremely nasty venom able to kill a human within minutes. But comparative to the leader of the pack, the eastern brown can only deliver a very small amount of venom. An average of 5 to 10 milligrams is injected with each bite, compared to 60 milligrams delivered by the taipan. Rod Somerville can count his blessings this viperous snake has tiny fangs.
It took quite a while to get better, and still sort of waiting to see what happens situation.
The eastern brown tracks the direction of its prey through collecting warm-blooded scent particles on its forked tongue. Once captured, its prey will not only succumb to the paralyzing and immobilizing venom very quickly, it will continue being injected with venom as it enters the snake's esophagus. This incredible physical adaptation has the venom acting as a very strong digestive enzyme attacking from the inside out.
It has fixed fangs at the front of the mouth. Those fangs are hollow, and it injects the venom straight down through those fangs. So a bite can be very, very quick. Sometimes you may be just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and you may be bitten.
This long, slender elapid will commonly encounter humans inhabiting urban and rural wall crevices, roofs, corrugated steel sheds, and rubbish dumps, wherever a plentiful supply of rats and mice are found. The eastern brown snake is one of the great success stories since European settlement in Australia.
The eastern brown is probably a spectacular example of a snake that has managed to benefit from the changes that human beings have wrought to the Australian environment. Almost every other native snake has decreased in numbers. The eastern brown has exploded. It's now a much more common snake than it was 200 years ago. So it's probably the big success story. And of course, that very potent venom is part of the reason for that success.
And you can see why people do pass away from these snake bites, because they are very dangerous animals. A lot more dangerous than what people give them credit for. Basically, I guess I learned the hard way.
Animals are competitive by nature. They need to be to survive. So in keeping with the action, we're going to rank them according to just how dangerous they can be. We'll scrutinize each one, highlighting how they can affect your life, quite literally, allowing you to decide if you're game enough to get as close as some of our experts. Unforgiving, potentially fatal, the eastern brown snake is taking the big spot at #1. It rules on the land, but slide into the ocean for a different encounter, this time with a slippery beast that has jaws capable of tearing the flesh from a human body. Writhing by night, darting in and out of dark ocean crevices silently, menacingly snatching prey from their sleep. dreaming fish are no match for its slender, dagger-like teeth embedded in multiple sets of alien-like jaws.
Their bodies will contort around and they'll tie themselves up in knots just trying to grab purchase to help rip the prey out of the reef and then consume it.
Do not mistake this alien of the ocean for Hollywood fiction. This is the moray eel.
When the moray eel grabs its prey, all these teeth go in and lock down on it. Not only do they have the teeth around the edge of the jaw, they actually have whole sets of jaws inside the middle of their throat. So teeth lining back down inside. And some species even have a second set of jaws down here that come forward, just like the monster in Aliens, to grab their prey.
Marine biologist Richard Fitzpatrick often comes face to face with this toothy ambush predator capable of consuming some of the most venomous sea creatures whole in one stealth bite.
I've seen big moray eels eat stonefish. So the most venomous fish in the world, the moray eel will go for it. It's because they don't want the spine sticking into the throat. Nearly all fish, when they eat other fish, will eat them head first. So as they're going down head first, any spines that are up will fold down as it goes down into the stomach.
This territorial, long-living eel is found along the tropical reef of northern Queensland. Some grow no longer than that of an adult arm and come in all colors of the rainbow, with the giant species growing to an enormous 8 feet in length. This nocturnal predator, encumbered with poor eyesight, has a heightened sense of smell and multiple lockjaws filled with hundreds of razor-sharp teeth.
They are very territorial. There's small home patches of the reef that they're working all the time. And when you go night diving, one of the cool things is actually when you see an eel out on a hunt, other fish will often follow along. So you can have trevally and red bass following the eel in hunting packs. Because if the eel goes into a hole and is unsuccessful in missing a fish and it comes flying out, the other predators are there to take it out at the same time. So you often see these groups of animals working together on these hunting expeditions.
Accidental attacks on humans from the moray eel arise when this wild and wondrous animal is hand-fed. The smell of fish on your hand, coupled with the animal's poor eyesight, often have it mistaking a fish for a finger, or worse.
There have been quite a few incidences where divers have been bitten by eels. If your hand's in the way, you're going to get bitten.
Almost 20 years ago, at a famous dive site off Cairns on the Queensland coast, a young and inexperienced diver placed pilchard fish into her dive vest to attract cod and moray eels for hand feeding, with devastating results.
When she went down, the eel came out and it smelt the food and her arm got in the way and it went for the food and basically ring-barked all the flesh off her arm, and subsequently she lost her right arm. And as she was fighting the eel off, it shredded her left hand and she was unable to use her left hand ever again as well.
Moray eels are broadcast spawners. The male and female perform an underwater dance, wrapping themselves around one another, conjointly releasing eggs and sperm into the water. Drifting elegantly as part of the oceanic plankton eel larvae have one of the longest planktonic stages. While attached, their floating gastric filaments absorb dissolved organic material directly from the water. This larval stage can last for a number of months.
A lot of people, sometimes they see this big long thing and they think it's a sea snake. But no, it's definitely, an eel is a fish. And there are eels out there, different other species called snake eels. And there's, in fact, types of snake eel that mimics the banded sea snake. They have exactly the same colour patterns. And so they're swimming around with the bands on their body pretending to be a sea snake, so other things just leave them alone.
Even though he has experienced firsthand the grip and tearing teeth of a moray eel.
As a young child, when I was snorkeling, I got bitten on the back of the ankle by a large moray eel. And it happens in locations where divers go down and feed them.
This has not altered Richard's view of this exciting animal.
Eels are beautiful to watch swimming around, so it's a very snake-like motion, sinusoidal ribbons down their body. And you know, they can move quite quickly and they can reverse up as well. But they're just great fun to see a big 6-7 foot long moray eel out on the hunt. Amazing thing to watch.
Inexperience and dangerous human interaction with this wild animal has given rise to fear and deadly attack over the years. But when treated with respect, the moray eel can be a beautiful and enigmatic vision to watch beneath the depths of the ocean. Admired from afar, this is not a mouth you want to get close to. The moray eel has a nasty bite, and you certainly wouldn't want to get in the way of all those teeth. But the chances of a collision with this animal are nothing like the chances of meeting the eastern brown snake. So the snake is going to hold tight to number 1, and the moray eel will take the second spot. Both animals are looking very formidable on the list, but coming up is an incredibly busy creature that packs a fair punch for its size. Australian bull ants are the most spectacular ants in the world. They're one of the largest and most primitive, and sometimes the most painful.
I guess they're quintessentially Australian. They're bizarre, they're sort of a throwback, they're a relic species, group of species. They're fairly primitive, and they're dangerous. Looks like a lot of Australian animals. It just seems everything here wants to bite you or eat you or hurt you in some way.
Living in rural Australia, it's common to see large bull ant nests, particularly on farms, and children growing up on farms almost always come into contact with these aggressive ants. Sisters Coco and Lily Pedretti live on a farm east of Perth, Western Australia. In their daily lives, they encounter many animals, but it is the insects they prefer to avoid.
There's a lot of wild animals, snakes, spiders, lizards, types of birds as well.
Although Coco was very aware of the dangers that can exist on Australian farms, it did not stop her or her friends from doing something definitely not recommended around bull ants.
I saw it coming because I was with my friends and they were jabbing at the bull ant's nest as a bit of fun.
Jabbing at a bull ant's nest is only going to lead to trouble.
After they had finished jabbing it, all the ants kind of exploded out of the nest and came and bit most of us. 4 of us got bitten. It hurt a lot. 4 friends, they were in a lot of pain because they didn't know what was expected from the ants. First, it kind of bites you with its front part. Afterwards, it turns around and stings you. If you come across a bull ant, I recommend not stabbing a stick at it like my idiot friends.
Coco's younger sister Lily was not so lucky.
One day I was with my sister out the back of our house because we lived on a farm. I heard her giggling because she was sitting on a rock and I went to go sit on the rock next to her and I had no idea what she was giggling about, and then I sat on the rock and all these bull ants came out and just kept on hurting me. I got bitten by a few bull ants all over, up my arms and down my legs too. It was massive pain. We had to come back to the house and I had to soak the bites in water.
The bull ant is high on the pain list. Its combination of front-loaded pinchers and a large stinger on the abdomens make them a tough insect to dislodge. But the bull ant has one other advantage over normal ants.
So what's interesting with them is when you see them on the ground and you move over somewhere and they follow you and it looks like they're actually watching you and following you, it's because they are. They're looking at you and they can see fairly well, and so they're constantly keeping an eye on where they are and where they're going, and then also looking for their prey at the same time.
There are almost 100 species of bull ants in the world, with 99 of them endemic to Australia and 1 in New Caledonia. Bull ants can sting multiple times, a real asset when hunting larger prey such as insects and other ants. They are active day and night and are considered one of the most aggressive ants in the world. They are painful, but in very rare cases, a bull ant can be life-threatening.
The percentage of people with severe allergic reactions has actually been rising steadily. I think it's over 3% of the population. Well, if someone goes anaphylactic, there's various symptoms, well, first of all, at the site of the sting, there will be swelling and redness and itchiness and burning, searing pain. Their heart rate will speed up, their blood pressure will drop, they might start feeling faint, they might start feeling nauseous or have headaches, and then all this can actually precipitate to unconsciousness and ultimately can lead to death unless they're treated.
Bull ants are a very well-known Australian insect. You can almost expect to see one even on a short holiday down under. And if they see you first, then there could be trouble.
If you go hiking in the bush and you come across bull ants, you'll see them on the ground hopping around, getting agitated, and you come near the nest entrance, there might only be one or two sitting at the entrance, but pretty quickly several more will come out and they'll start homing in on you and walking towards you or jumping towards you. And these little jerky jumps, which I suppose the movement, well, at least in me, it elicits a bit of fear, because you see them coming and anticipating the lovely sting that comes at the end. Generally, they'll approach people and they're not scared. They won't back down, and they'll come at you, and if you don't back away, then next thing you know, they will crawl onto you and try to sting you.
Keen for the bite, as with our first two animals, but the bull ant isn't in the same league as either the moray eel or the eastern brown snake. It's going to nip in at third for the moment, but it's got some tough competition ahead. Aiming to knock it from its nesting spot is another slippery specimen. This one's striking high on the fashion stakes of snakes. Of all of Australia's dangerous snakes, perhaps the most terrifying to encounter is the striking-looking red-bellied black snake. Endemic to the East Coast, the large glossy black snake with a red belly is the one you are most likely to encounter in your own backyard.
The red-bellied black snake is probably the venomous snake that people are most likely to see in the parts of Australia where most of the people live, and that's along the eastern coast of Australia. And they're a spectacular snake, up to 1.5 meters, even 2 meters long, jet black above, bright red on the sides and sort of pinkish on the belly. And unlike many of the Australian snakes, they move around by day, and they are perfectly happy to settle into the suburbs. So that even where there are plenty of people around, there's this bright, spectacular creature wandering around during the daytime in the places where people go.
With a diet consisting primarily of frogs, other reptiles, and small mammals, the red-bellied black snake is also perfectly happy to take to the water in search of their next feed.
They do spend a lot of time hunting underwater, and they will hunt, predate on fish and eels a lot of the time. And they could actually spend a lot of time under that water doing their hunting. Well, there's one instance I have known of where I know people down at Shoalhaven once. Down at Shoalhaven, they were fishing, and as they were fishing, they pulled the fish in, and this black snake came out of the water chasing this fish out on their line, up on the sand.
The red-bellied black snake is a species of elapid snake native to eastern Australia. Though its venom is capable of making you very sick, a bite from it is not generally fatal, and it is less venomous than other deadly Australian snakes. It is common in woodlands, forests, and swamplands, and is one of Australia's best-known snakes. So you'd think these fearsome predators would pose a huge threat to people going about their normal lives.
Fortunately, for an animal that is so common and so frequently encountered, the red-bellied black snake is less dangerous to humans than really any of the other big venomous snakes. So it is poisonous, and certainly it can cause substantial illness, and it might even be fatal to a child. But as far as I know, there are no recorded cases of fatalities of adults from red-bellied black snakes, and many people are bitten.
But while a lot of people are bitten, incredibly, many don't report nasty symptoms. Luckily, they have received a dry bite. John Cann, an experienced snake handler from Sydney, has been bitten 6 times by snakes, but only once by a red-bellied black snake.
My dad was in snakes from the time he was 12-year-old. He was involved with snakes, or before then, and even his grandparents who reared him, you know. The red-bellied black snake bit me. Started to get quite off about it all. Strawn Sutherland was telling me to get to hospital, and I did. And they put me into Prince Henry, and the next morning, never give me antivenom. It was okay. The doctor said, "How you are?" I said, "I want out of here. I'm perfect." So they sent me home, and I got home, and I got very ill. Felt quite crooked.
John spent 8 days in hospital. The bite seemed harmless at the time, but like so many snake bites, the real damage comes many hours later.
More or less you just wipe it off. It's an embarrassment to get bitten by a snake. I don't think anyone in the world who has been bitten by a snake never said the same thing, "He got me." Anyone who gets bitten by a snake a second time would be a pretty rare occurrence if there was a just an average person.
The red-bellied blacksnakes are not always in a nasty mood.
There are a lot of dry bites. The snake can decide not to inject venom, and red bellies seem to choose that option pretty often. So it's a terrifying sight. There's this black and red thing that flattens out and hisses at you. But the reality is that if you give it half a chance, it'll zip away into the rushes, and that'll be the end of the encounter.
And fortunately for many people who have been bitten by red bellies and other deadly snakes, they've had the good fortune to have only suffered dry bites.
Any of the venomous snakes potentially can decide how much venom they want to inject when they bite. And so, for example, if they bite a rat, they might put in more venom than they do if they bite a mouse. And they can do exactly the same thing with a defensive strike.
And some people discover to their good fortune they haven't been bitten at all.
It actually turns out that the strike is not quite as it appears. We did some high-speed filming of brown snake strikes and showed that quite frequently the snake didn't even open its mouth. We had a glove just stuffed with straw that we'd push towards an aroused eastern brown snake. It would strike at it. You would think it had bitten the hand, but in fact, many cases it didn't even bother to open its mouth when it did it. So there are a lot of strikes like that that are really just bluff. But unfortunately, of course, some of those strikes are not bluff, and that's when the problems come in.
So if you're lucky, that frightening encounter with the red-bellied blacksnake might just leave you with a case of badly jangled nerves.
The good thing about the red-bellied blacksnake, the main thing I want to say about them is that they're probably the gentlemen of the snake world, in the fact that they're not an aggressive snake for no reason. No snake attacks for no reason. They're all defensive animals. They're not aggressive animals. So a red-bellied blacksnake's probably the most least even in defence. It'll probably put on a bit of a bluff, bit of defence when it's cornered, but generally they'll usually only bite once restrained.
Although both Andrew and Rick believe that the red-bellied blacksnake is not as dangerous as people think, John Cann has a different view.
Well, around Sydney there's quite a few deadly snakes. You could call a black snake deadly because although all the records say they've never killed anyone, I got records where they have, and why not? I had 8 days in hospital from what they say a lousy red-bellied black snake.
Hissing its way into the list, the red-bellied blacksnake is definitely going to knock the bull ant to number 4. In the snake world, it's way below the eastern brown, but it's also shy and will probably go for the dry bite, so it's going to sit in 3rd spot below the moray eel. However, keen to enter the equation for the most dangerous is a creature associated with zombies and blue flashing warning signs. There's nothing like a relaxing visit to the beach with the kids on a warm summer's day. Exploring the safe, shallow tidal pools to collect colorful shells and tiny marine animals is definitely a highlight for the family outing. But if you only knew, lurking beneath the tranquil water's surface hides a small, highly intelligent, well-camouflaged, and most importantly, a deadly creature that can turn your family fun into a life or death drama. One of the most deadly creatures known to man comes in a tiny package. The blue-ringed octopus is the smallest of the octopus family, growing to the size of a golf ball. They're brown in color, but when disturbed, have bright blue pulsing rings all over their body and legs. Living for up to 2 years and dying after the reproduction cycle, the blue rings lead a brief but active life. They're also highly intelligent problem solvers, so I guess you could say they're the nutty professors of the seas.
Your average blue-ringed octopus probably only lives about 3 or 4 months. They grow very, very quickly. Basically, the males and the females grow up, become sexually mature. The males pass over sperm packets. The female then stops feeding and lays probably 50, 60 eggs and nurses those eggs for probably about a month and a half, depending what the temperature's doing. Those eggs hatch and the female then dies. So very short lifespan on these animals. Blue-ringed octopus are found right around Australia, in most of the rock pools around the water's edge.
The blue ring is generally a shy animal, preferring to hide away under ledges and holes in the reef. But if disturbed, they will become one of the most lethal animals on the planet. Sydney Aquarium's Martin Garwood knows its dangers.
The blue ring octopus has what's called tetrodotoxin in their beaks, so they can bite and inject it like a venom. And it's extremely venomous. It's one of the most dangerous toxins known to nature.
Tetrodotoxin is the same neurotoxin in pufferfish and poisonous dart frogs, and it's 1,200 times more toxic than cyanide. There's no antivenom available yet, so a bite from a blue-ringed octopus is particularly deadly. Venom biologist Jamie Seymour has spent many years working with deadly creatures.
A bite from a blue ring is potentially fatal, there's no doubt about that. It will stop all the voluntary muscles in your body from moving, so what it basically does is stops your diaphragm from moving. Once your diaphragm stops moving, it means you can't breathe, and so you asphyxiate and die.
Many deadly encounters with a blue ring happen without the victim even knowing.
We were just out with friends on their boat and pulled up the boat, so we all left in the water, a lovely day for a swim. So we went in the water, we were just swimming around, and I could see some shells on the floor. I just picked them up and I put them in the top of my togs. And then I swam back to the boat, and at the back of the boat my son was there, so I got them out, handed him the shells, at which point he put them on the table on the back of the boat, and out popped a blue-ringed octopus. And he was flashing brightly with his blue rings going. It was only when we went home and we thought we'd look it up on the internet and realise it's got enough venom to kill 21 people, adults, and that you wouldn't know because it basically paralyses you. So, yes, it was at that point that we thought we'd been rather stupid.
We've had probably about 2 or 3 deaths from blue-ringed octopus in Australia. By and large, as long as you breathe for the victim, you will keep them alive. That toxin will wear off over a period of hours and you can bring the person back to life. By and large, most people know they've been bitten by a blue ring because it hurts. Basically, you pick the animal up, and that's the way that most people get stung. They poke at it or do something with it. The animal then flashes these brilliant blue rings at you, and then it bites. So it's got a beak very much like a parrot beak, and there's a series of glands in the back of the animal. When it bites, it then spits the venom or the toxin into the bite wound, and it tends to hurt. From then on in, it's a matter of time, paralysis setting in. But if you're bitten by a blue ring, you know about it because it hurts.
Within minutes, your lips and tongue go numb. You have difficulty breathing. Then total paralysis of the lungs follow. You then go into a zombie state where victims appear unconscious, but they can still hear what is going on around them.
Historically, this is exactly how you make zombies. Everybody goes, oh, there are such things as zombies. There are. If you get just the right amount of toxin, you can decrease the heart rate and decrease the breathing rate so low, it looks like the person's dead. So they may only breathe once or twice a minute, and it looks like they're dead. So basically you give them enough of the toxin, bury them in the ground in a very shallow layer of sand or dirt. After about 4 or 5 hours, the toxin wears off, the person then digs themselves out of the ground, instant zombie. If you're making zombies, you have to get the amount of toxin exactly right. Too much, the person dies. Not enough, then the person doesn't, their heart rate and their breathing doesn't decrease enough, so it still looks like they're alive. So it's a very, very fine line.
The symptoms from a blue-ringed octopus bite are nausea, blurred vision, numbness, loss of speech, inability to swallow, and paralysis. If bitten, time is not on your side. It is a medical emergency.
The best thing to do is a compression bandage. Head to hospital as quickly as possible and they'll put you on a respirator to breathe for you. Blue rings are very small, so they can feel threatened by anything bigger than themselves. So humans, especially kids looking around touch pools, they're looking for things that are cool, and a little octopus might seem like a good animal to interact with, but that's going to be very scary to that octopus, and that's when they could potentially try and defend themselves by biting.
It's only when you provoke them or you upset them or you mess with them that they bite. It's a defensive attitude. These guys use this venom predominantly for their food. Okay, so they're feeding on crabs and other crustaceans, things of that nature. So what they do is they jump on the crab, they bite a hole in its back, spit the venom in, and it paralyses the crab, then they eat it. These guys use it, I mean, if you picked one up and the rings weren't flashing and it wasn't upset, it'll happily sit on your hand. It's when they get upset that they react and basically go, okay, well, I've got no other option. Bite you, inject venom into you, and then they try and get away.
So your next outing to the beach can very quickly turn to high drama, because waiting in the shallows is a small demon with a devastating bite.
Like most animals, if you know what you're doing, you can hang on to the animals, and the chances of being stung or bitten are very, very small, but they exist. It's much like snakes. If you know what you're doing and you stay away from the bitey end, you're as safe as houses. To the average punter, though, it's not an animal you should be playing with.
The danger rating of the blue-ringed octopus is high, so it's going to challenge the arena and knock out a few spots. The bull ant takes a bump down to 5th, but the blue-ringed octopus is still on the move, pushing the red-bellied blacksnake to 4th and the moray eel to 3rd. It's not going to take on the might of the eastern brown snake, so it's going to nestle in at 2nd as we meet our next animal who has an age-old claim to fame. They're one of Australia's icons, the oldest breed of dog in the world. For over 5,000 years, dingoes have roamed the great southern land. Although notoriously timid, they're a wild canine with a bad reputation. Enemy, or ecological necessity, the dingo is built tough to withstand Australia's harsh climate and survive as an apex predator, a carnivorous powerhouse with a vice-like bite force found at dawn and dusk, scavenging or hunting for food.
They've got those main canines at the either side. That's where they can really crunch through those bones and rip and tear if they need to. They usually swallow straight down whole as well.
Originally thought to be a subspecies of grey wolf, in 2014 Australian scientists redefined the wildlife icon, giving it a classification all of its own, separate from other dogs and wolves. The dingo's origins can be traced back to Asia, and for Indigenous Australians, they held a special cultural significance, keeping evil spirits away.
They're pretty cheeky, so anything that you leave in the enclosure, like water bottles, rakes, you won't get them back. They'll destroy them.
We found out just how cheeky they can be during the filming of this segment. Our small GoPro camera was situated to capture some close-up images of the dingoes, and it didn't take long for the camera to be snatched and then taken on a little ride. Natalie Hill's day job is to study dingoes and their many mysteries. Over the years, she has learned what makes them tick, unlocking the secrets behind their complex pack structure and intelligent animal behavior.
They crack me up every day. They have little personalities. They're very timid as well. When you start doing conditioning and training with them, they're super smart. They've got 25% greater sensory organs than your local domestic dog, so they pick up on things really quickly.
You don't survive for 5,000 years without exceptional physical abilities, and that's exactly what the dingo has got. A flexible neck means they can rotate their large head almost 180 degrees in each direction. Their wrists are like a human's, enabling them to climb trees and open gates and doors. And those permanently erect, highly tuned ears can hear the heartbeat of an animal far away. For Natalie, dingoes are just part of her neighborhood.
You do see them at night scavenging. There's a few actually around my house, which I don't feed, but you do often encounter them, and yeah, you sort of just stop and appreciate them. Sometimes they'll be startled and they'll look, but most of the time they head off into the bush and stay on their merry way.
Preying on sheep and young cattle, the dingo is the only Australian native animal to be considered a pest. A fence 3 times larger than the Great Wall of China has been built to keep them away from livestock, and in some states, the predator can be legally culled. Yet on the other hand, the dingo is important for the ecosystem, helping regulate populations of kangaroos, feral cats, and foxes. As for attacks on humans, again, it's a catch-22 situation, one which has turned a timid creature into a time bomb.
It's only when they come into human contact and are being fed by people, that is a real danger to people, is that when they habituate and get used to getting a free feed of humans, and that's probably the main difference.
Fraser Island, the world's largest sand island located off the coast of Queensland. A popular getaway for some 400,000 tourists every year. But visitors must share the World Heritage Site with its native inhabitants, dingoes. With many of the animals now interbred with domestic dogs, these are among the only remaining purebred dingoes in Australia. Attacks are rare, but they do happen. One dingo tried to grab a girl from her tent, 2 mauled a 9-year-old boy to death, and a German tourist was bitten by a dingo at night after getting lost. Brazen, opportunistic behavior that authorities say is born from human interaction and a lack of knowledge about one of Australia's most fascinating and misunderstood creatures.
The reason people feed them is because they have a perception that dingoes need to look like their dog at home. So your domestic dog has a lot more weight, whereas the dingo needs to look, you need to be able to see their ribs. They need to look like a racehorse. Because they're doing so many kilometres a day, they really need to be fit and healthy to be able to achieve a wild lifestyle.
Dingoes must now relearn to fear humans while humans are being taught how to better live with dingoes. If you do come across an angry dingo, stand still and fold your arms across your chest. Face the animal and calmly back away. Wait until the dingo is gone before leaving. Do not run or wave your arms. But what is the #1 tip for staying dingo safe?
Not feeding wild dingoes and just appreciate them from a distance. So take photographs, appreciate them from a distance and don't get too close.
Although the dingo is tarnished with a bad reputation, it's not enough to penetrate the top players. It's just going to cruise in at #6, leaving the arena intact. As a result, the highly venomous eastern brown snake maintains center stage at #1. A few big guns have entered the arena in the fight to dominate the top 10. The state of play will definitely see a few animals fall, not only down the ladder, but off the list. Right now, it's a solid group of animals. The sheer might of the water buffalo has seen it hold a spot for a while, but it's about to tumble out of the top 10 and out of the arena. That leaves one spot free, but there's more than one animal entering the state of play. So the hair-raising Sydney funnel-web spider is also taking a plunge from the top. That's 2 spots, and that's enough for the animals featured in this episode. Only 2 are going to rank in the top of the danger stakes, and they are 2 intimidating contenders. Strong at #1 from the beginning of this program is one of the toughest competitors. It's nasty, it's everywhere, and you don't want to get in its way. The eastern brown snake is sliding in at #3, above the rest of the brown snake family, knocking the guarda to 4th and the dugite to 5. A threatening trio of snakes holding tight one after the other. This will see the rest of the lineup bolting down the list. The next entrant to enter the spotlight is the captivating blue-ringed octopus. It has the power to bring your life to an end, so it's going into the mix at #6. This bumps the paralysis tick to 7, the Johnston's crocodile to 8, with the cone snail and tiger snake shunting down the stack to a very tenuous hold at 9 and 10. Maintaining its claim to the prime position is the ubiquitous mosquito. Small, but capable of destroying your world in so many ways. For some, it'll only cause an annoying welt, but if the nasty ones come your way, your life is going to take on a debilitating journey. Also tough on our list at #2 is the bull shark. It certainly made its mark in history, taking a number of lives and leaving few survivors. It's not a group to be messed with, and while they're all safe for now, they're only 10 of the 72 dangerous animals in Australia. We've showcased 30 in the series so far. That's close to halfway, and we've met many animals to avoid, but there are quite a few big players yet to take the stage. One of the most talked about creatures across the world is the great white shark. Enter its home, and you run the risk of an encounter. It's rare, but it happens with devastating consequences. From bit brute to small, ugly but interesting and rated high on the nasty scale is the stonefish. It'll take you by surprise with a pain so great you'll wish you'd left the planet. Even more crippling is the most venomous snake in the world. The inland taipan takes the claim to this extreme status. It tends to live away from human habitation, but if it took to the built-up areas of the cities, there'd be an incredible number of victims. But taking the victim status is the supposedly innocent honeybee. Busy making their delicious nectar, but if you have an allergic reaction to their sting, you may have less than half an hour to live. Time is also not on your side if the box jellyfish swims your way. It won't attack, but you need to make sure you're not heading in the same direction. You'll also need to change tack if a sea snake cruises your way, another must-avoid animal. This is just a taste of what's to come as we tackle the most dangerous, the most feared, and the most amazing creatures.